Travis Wingoodsell. I've minimized my camera screen so that I can pay attention to the processing time for part 2 as I'm witnessing in real time that YouTube has a new way of throttling people's processing. It goes down to 11 minutes and then it jumps up to 13 minutes, and what the hell? Okay, so Samson, this is part 3. I've wasted a lot of time explaining to Mormons, because this is LDS Mormon Prophecies of Christ, specifically the second coming, as Mormons have now called it, trying to be like Christians. And I've been trying to explain to Mormons, we're not Christian, not one iota. The only thing we're Christian is that we call our God Amen, as the Christians do Jesus Christ. And I've gone over who Amen is, and so again I referred you to the first 2 videos. And again I have to remind you, because YouTube informs me that the majority of you coming to this video are coming to this video for the very first time. And so you don't know I have other videos. You don't know what I've been talking about. You don't understand. And it's made evident by abusive, anti-Christian Mormons who make abusive, threatening, life-threatening comments. And so, yes, I am Mormon. I can't denounce my Mormonhood, even if I were to send the church a letter of resignation. I no longer want my name on the records of the church for you to commit insurance fraud and tax fraud. Yeah, that's what they're doing with our names. We are not members in the sense of board members who have a say as to the direction of the church. We are chattel members who just give money to the church, just like a corporation. We give money to corporations, grocery stores, other stores, because we're chattel to them. We are chattel to the church. And it's been that way since 1923, when Heber J. Grant filed articles of incorporation after the church was disincorporated through the Edmunds-Tucker Act. And they did it through the state of Utah so that they can get away with it. But again, the church has been withholding history from us, our own church history. They are not telling us these things. And as a result, we don't understand the true prophecies of our religion for this Christ who is to come in the latter days, as we are called in our title, Latter-day Saints. What good does it be to be Latter-day Saints if the church is righteous and there's no need for a restoration of the church? There needs to be a restoration of the church. Joseph Smith was murdered. He did not save the Jews. That's why the Jews are not followers of the Christian God Christ. It's because that Christ died. He failed to save the Jews. And it was set during the Roman period. And notice that Jesus of the Gospels does not have his 18-year-old period, teenage period talked about. And that's what we're leading in today, because Samson is born, then all of a sudden he's getting married. So there's missing information in Samson, just as there was missing information with Jesus. But in Samson, we are getting information that Jesus didn't get covered in the Gospels, but which would have happened had it been a real historical account. All the Bible is prophecy of this latter-day Christ who will save the Jews, save the house of Israel, like as Moses. Jeremiah covers it twice because of the importance that Jeremiah understood. And so Joseph Smith likewise knew, oh, I'm not the guy after all, despite the Kirtland Temple appearance of Elijah during Passover. And so therefore it's going to be a future Mormon, and I'll put it in section 103 of the Doctrine and Covenants, starting in verse 15. Verse 16 is where he specifically says it. A Mormon, like as Moses, is to restore the kingdom of David, the redemption of Zion. Not the current president of the church in that future time after Joseph. Because Joseph knew from his 19 July 1840 talk, I will be murdered by one of you guys in this audience, one of my brethren, and the church will be usurped. He knew that, and so he prophesied of a future Christ to restore the kingdom. The Book of Mormon talks about it, and I've gone over that. So Jesus, had he been a real historical person, would have had his 18th year talked about, or 19th year after turning 18. Because a few years before Jesus would have turned 18, depending on which date you want to give for him, which again, he's a prophecy figure. He's not an actual character from that time period. He is used in a story context under the Roman Empire to prophesy about the future Christ. And so, had he been a real historical character, there was a Caesar who, before he would have turned 18, regardless of what year, who declared that all Jews under the Roman Empire, when they turn 18, are to serve the Roman military. And it was for a several-year period of time of service required of all Jews. It was already required of Romans, and now they were requiring it of Jews. And so Jesus, had he been a real historical character, would have been enlisted in the Roman military. But that's not talked about, is it? What was Jewish tradition up until that point, and then continued thereafter, was that when a Jewish boy turned 18, he was then arranged to be married to a Jewish girl. That's how it was done. They had arranged marriages, and the parents arranged the marriage, paying the bride price, the dowry, as it's later been called in our generation, or previous generation. I don't think we call it dowry anymore, because the civil rights movement put an end to all that. And The girl was often the firstborn. As you read in the Old Testament, Jacob, for example, goes to Laban. He sees haughty Rachel. I want to marry Rachel. Laban says, no, my oldest daughter Leah is older. She needs to be married first. And so Laban says, well, you can marry both, but you have to marry Leah first after you slave for me for a period of time. Then you can marry Leah, and then you have to slave for me some more before you can marry Rachel. And so he loved Rachel enough to be a slave to Laban and to acquire his love. And the sad part is that with the birth of Benjamin, Rachel died in childbirth. So he didn't get much time married to her as he would have wanted. But they had a long courtship. And so, that's the one thing that would have been in there had the story of Jesus been a literal history of Jesus and not a prophecy of a future Christ who was to come and save the Jews and save the house of Israel like as Moses. The other factor in this is that in saving the Jews, he is to restore the true religion. And so during that period of time, there was no Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It was the Jewish religion. And notice, Jesus is shown battling it out in debate against the Pharisees, who were constantly falsely accusing him. The Pharisees were the religious leaders of the Jews, going after Jesus for preaching this new gospel, this anti-Jewish gospel that Jesus was quoting from the Torah with, the 5 books of Moses, where the Pharisees had created hedge laws around the law of Moses that were not written down, but were a cultural standard, the standards of the church. The For Strength of the Youth pamphlet. So, yes, you're recognizing very well that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are behaving exactly like the prophecy of Pharisees. And so, yes, even though Jesus is never quoted as going against Caiaphas, the president of the Jews, the high priest, he's constantly ripping on the Pharisees. Matthew 23, case in point. That's an awesome chapter in Matthew. And so, what happens at the end of Jesus is he dies. He does not save the Jews. He doesn't save the house of Israel. But the temple of the Jews, who were apostate, do you understand that? Jesus was saying, I'm here to restore the kingdom of David. The kingdom of David is not just the government, it's also the religion. During Jesus' time, the Jews had split. The Sadducees were more of the government of the Jews. The Pharisees were more of the religion of the Jews. But the Romans still had a theocracy. Their Caesar was, as emperor, both the government leader and the religious leader. And that had been the way all the way back in history. And so the kings, as they call them in the previous ages, were not just kings. They were Melchizedeks, kings and high priests. And so Jesus in the Gospels was supposed to restore the kingdom of David. That's why they call him the Son of David, and they put the mockery sign on the cross above him. He failed, he's a loser. And yet they rewrote the story to have the one guard going, "You are the true Christ, as you're dead and failed to fulfill the prophecies." But the temple of the Jews was destroyed. And I hope I could get to the end of this story, and it's not likely because there's so much involved in this prophecy of just Samson alone. But I talked to you about Bruce in the second part, mocking him for putting that Samson destroys the building. He doesn't tell us what building it was that was destroyed. It's the temple of the Philistines, using the context of the Philistine period to tell the story of Samson. That's the prophecy, is that the Christ in the latter days is restoring the kingdom of David, which means restoring the government, restoring the religion. Notice how Joseph Smith said the prophecy that never made it into our scripture, that, and it's because it was in the 1841 where he said that there are those among our audience here who want me dead, and you will ask, is it I? Just as referring to the Last Supper of Jesus, where he says that one will betray him, and it was Judah. Notice that it was Judas, Judah, Utah, phonetically the same. I've gone over that in other videos, and when we get to Samson, we see other symbolisms related to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as I've been trying to cover it with the marriage. And so this video most likely is just going to cover the marriage of Samson, whereas the last one was the birth of Samson, and the other one was the preliminary stuff about an overall view, talking about the parents. Yes, Jesus of the Gospels, had it been an accurate history rather than a prophecy of the future Christ, Jesus would have also been married and had kids by the age of 30 when he started his mission. So yes, Mary Magdalene was well known and understood to be his wife, because he needs to have a wife. But at the Nicene Council, they were confused. Was he mortal? Was he half God, half mortal? Was he all God? Was he spirit? Every single bishop had their own understanding of God, and therefore they couldn't come to a consensus. That's why Constantine, the Melchizedek of the Roman Empire, said, okay guys, Hamuzius, that's now your God, and you will worship him. And thus came the Trinity. And so, understand that there are things here in the prophecies that you have to combine with the other prophecies to get a fuller understanding of each phase of the last days Christ. Whether it's his parents, whether it's the organization that he belongs to, whether it's the government that he belongs to, whether it's his birth, his place of growing up, what he does as a child, what he does as an adult, his marriages, because it's clear, 2 wives. If you're looking for a Mormon, 2 wives. Did you not know that? Again, I went over section 103 of the Doctrine and Covenants, verse 16. Joseph Smith says, I will raise up a man from my people, Mormons, who shall be like Moses and lead Mormons to restore the kingdom of David, the redemption of Zion. Because Joseph realized it's not him, he's not the fulfillment. So it's somebody else in the future. And thus all the prophecies all talk about this person. But you got to put all the prophecies together to figure it all out. Where is he born? When is he born? Where does he live? What does he do? How do we identify him? How do we know him? And Samson is compact in a lot of these areas. Not all of them, but a good portion of them. You still have to incorporate the other prophecies. And so here we have verse 14. After 13 closes with Samson being born, called Samson, and he grew, and the Lord blessed him. And so that's it. So here we go in 14. And Samson went down to Timnath. That's a place. And he saw a woman. Guess what? He's in puberty. It's time for him to get married. And whether he's 18, they don't say, but that's the tradition. You get married at 18. But before that time, it could have been earlier, because men or boys were put through the ritual of becoming a male, an adult, a man, when they hit puberty. Similar to women, girls, when they hit puberty, they bleed. And that's the identification that it's time for them, for the ritual, to become a woman. It's because they're now ready. And so men likewise have their little signal with the dreams that get pretty hot and sweaty to indicate that a boy is ready to become a man. And yes, it has to do with sex. As baptism refers to sex, immersed in the water, what is immersed in a woman? Encased in water in the womb. The seed of the man. That's baptism. I've gone over this in other videos, but because you guys are most likely here for the first time, I have to go into greater detail to explain things. But I'm not wanting to go into greater detail because we're already at 24 minutes. And so, yes, he sees a woman in Timnath of the daughter of the Philistines. He's a Danite of the true Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, even though if you know the history of the church, the Danites were the secret organization within Mormonism that kept getting Joseph Smith in trouble for committing crimes to the surrounding neighborhood until 1838, when they actually did a coup d'etat on the Mormon leadership. And that's why I call that year the leadership crisis. Whereas others have referred to Joseph's death as the succession crisis. So I'm the one who called it the leadership crisis in 1838. And it's because of the Danites that were the secret combination group that infiltrated Joseph's organization to purposely take over the organization and put it into apostasy as prophesied. And so, yes, daughter of the Philistines. The Philistines are the evil church. They're the evil kingdom. They're the church and kingdom of evil, Philistines. And Samson takes a liking to an evil woman. This is his first wife. And nonetheless, the temples that they had were not Jewish temples. They were Philistine temples. Remember, the house of Israel is in the land occupied by Philistines. And sure enough, we read right from the beginning in part 1 that the story starts off with the house of Israel is evil again. The house of Israel is wicked. And the author does not want to associate the house of Israel with the Philistines. But that's exactly what happened. The Israelites are Philistines. Their temples are the Israelite temples. So Manoah and his wife are making a sacrifice at either a temple of the Philistines or a shrine that I talked about in part 2. And so that you need to understand is that during apostasy, it's prophesied that the religion of the true and living God will be in apostasy. And though they'll have temples, and though they'll hold marriages, remember, in the days before the flood of Noah, they were marrying and giving in marriage. But they were wicked. That's the prophecy. The Jews had the Jerusalem temple, but were wicked. This is a common theme for the prophecy of the latter-day Christ. And that's why it's so tough for Mormons, and why it's so tough for me to get the information out. Is that I'm Mormon. I had to come to the realization my church is not the true church. They are the great and abominable church. Literally. And so understand this, that even though they're talking about the Philistines, he's trying to disassociate, the author is trying to disassociate her from being of the house of Israel. Because he wants to still think of the house of Israel as good. But he says right from the beginning they're evil. So understand they're one and the same. And he came up and told his father and mother and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath, and she's a hottie of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me to wife. See, the parents were supposed to arrange a marriage for him, but he says, she's hot, I want her, go buy her for me. Because that's how it was done. So his father and mother said unto him, Is there never a woman among the daughters of thy brethren, the Danites, the secret combination within the Mormon church? Or among all my people of the Mormon church? That thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? See, that was understood as an insult, a slang, racist comment. You're uncircumcised. But in the context, it was, they're not of our religion. And yet, the author already clarified, the parents and Samson are born into an evil religion. And Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she pleaseth me well. Notice he doesn't say to his mother. But his father and mother knew not that it was of the Lord. It's a prophecy. So when you look at the other prophecies about Ruth and Tamar and others, even Mary, you understand what the reason is. But Mary Magdalene, even as the Pope associated her with the adulteress, that would not have been Jesus's wife. He was wrong on that, but he would still have been married. And so, let's see, that he sought an occasion against the Philistines. The Lord sought an occasion against the Philistines. The author is trying to say this was prophesied because of, he's trying to raise up Samson to be the Christ, to save the Israelites from the Philistines and restore the kingdom of David, as I've gone over that in the other parts. So I'm not going to repeat that because we're already past 30 minutes. For at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. So again, this is what Jeremiah prophesied for the Christ of the latter days. He will save the house of Israel, including the Jews. This is why the Jews did not accept Jesus of the Gospels. I have to keep repeating that because it doesn't get through to people. And so, then went Samson down, and his father and his mother. So he won, because he went to his father. His father understands the desires of a boy. To Timnath. And the mother, of course, must keep silent and do whatever her husband tells her to. She was bought and paid for. That's how it was. And so with our civil rights movement giving freedoms and liberties to women, we've forgotten all about the world's history, even the United States' history in this matter, as our treatment towards women has not been very kind. To Timnath, and came to the vineyards of Timnath, and behold, a young lion roared against him. The lion is the symbol of Judah, the house of Judah, from which King David came from. He's in the land of the Philistines, dominated by the Philistines, government and religion of the Philistines. And a young lion comes instead. Remember, Samson was just born. He's a young child. He's in puberty now. He's ready for marriage. But you see the symbolism that's coming out here. This is the false Christ. And it's a symbol of Judah, which I've already done for you in this video. Utah. Judas, Judah, Utah. Samson gets betrayed. The Christ of the Gospels is betrayed. That's the prophecy. The latter-day Christ is to be betrayed. And so they have the young lion, the false Christ of the apostate, evil religion. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he rent him, the lion, as he would have rent a goat, a kid. And he had nothing in his hand, no weapon, just his bare hands, conquered the lion, killed it. But he told not his father or his mother what he had done. His parents don't know that he is the promised Christ, the promised Messiah. He keeps that a secret and slays the lion. It's a symbol of him being the Christ. And his name, I went over in part 2, he's the Sun King. Remember the parable of the 10 virgins. Who were the virgins waiting for? The bridegroom. Samson is the bridegroom. He's going to get his woman for the wedding, with the wedding feast. And his parents don't know. Not Scotty doesn't know. And if you know that song and which movie it came from, with which popular Matt Damon character, it's not anything like that. I was reminded of that this morning, that's why I bring it up. And so, notice Mary is talked about in the Gospels as not understanding that Jesus is the Christ, as he keeps doing these things that are disobedient to his parents, and yet she ponders in her heart as the author tries to soften Mary, because she's eventually going to become an immaculate virgin and a goddess in the Catholic Church, not just a saint. So, yeah, the author tried to soften the blow. But the parents didn't know. I guess they didn't hear the roar of the young lion? Or the of the dead lion? But notice in Amos 3:7, it's what Mormons have as the scripture mastery, but before it talks about an example of a lion roaring, which is the signal of danger from the source itself of danger, because lions kill humans. And but they say, surely the Lord God will do nothing, save he shall revealeth his secrets unto his servants the prophets, which is not translated correctly, but nevertheless serves the purpose that Mormons are waiting for President Nelson to say, hey, this coronavirus is part of the symbolism of the prophecies for the Latter-day Christ to come, who will replace me as president of the church and will restore the kingdom that we've sort of destroyed after the murder of Joseph Smith. Notice they don't say anything like that. Obviously they don't. Wicked never admits that they're wicked, unlike in the movies and TV shows where the bad guy in cop shows always confesses and gives the motive, which is not necessary for a conviction of guilt, but nevertheless they think it adds to the storyline to help us explain why this person did what they did. And in the James Bond movies and such, the villain always hesitates to kill Bond, and thus Bond saves the day because they hesitated. Just SNL does a skit on it. I'll leave it at that. And so, and he went down and talked with the woman, his little hottie cutie, and it's actually a virgin, it's not a woman. Women are those who have had babies. Virgins are those who have not had babies. That's how it's supposed to be translated in Scripture. And so he talked with the virgin, and she pleased Samson well. And after a time he returned to take her. There's a period of waiting for the courtship. and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. There's a lion that's still there, and now there's a beehive inside the carcass of the lion, with a wedding feast. What's at Temple Square of the Apostate Church. There's the Salt Lake Temple, where sealings are held for virgins, ideally. And then there's the Lion House, where people have their wedding feast. And then the Beehive House is next to it. So that's why I told you about my story about the woman formerly called my second ex-wife. That's what we went through. We were in sealing room number 13, and it was arranged for us to have our wedding feast at the Lion House, next to the Beehive House. So that's why I call my second ex, now that she's divorced me, I call her Delilah, to remind her she left me, she betrayed me, just as Delilah betrayed Samson. And we're not going to get to it. We're already past 40 minutes now. Let's see. So this first wife is not Delilah, by the way. He is married twice. Let's see. He took thereof in his hands and went on eating. Okay. And came to his father and mother, and he gave them, and they did eat. So the spoils of his conquest gave to his parents, but he never told them how they are enjoying the promised land, milk and honey. See what the author has done here? Sort of skipping ahead to say that he has conquered the lion and has restored the kingdom of David without his parents knowing it, but his parents are the beneficiaries of the restored kingdom in the promised land. And so he should take all that out, and it should be placed at the end, where Samson's not supposed to die, but conquers the Philistines, destroys the temple that Bruce R. McConkie calls a building, and then his parents are beneficiaries of the honey of the promised land. But the author didn't write it that way. Let's see, so his father went down unto the woman, because it's the father who arranges it. Mahana, you ugly. Johnny Lingo, in case you are way out of knowing that context and thinking to get mad at me. How dare you! I had a woman who commented on the video about the men who are unemployed in Utah as having violated the family proclamation. She was very offended that I would dare blame the men who are unemployed for being wicked when it was not their fault. And she started by saying, I've agreed with several of the criticisms of the church leaders, but on this, I draw the line. She did not understand at all, and I commented that in the video commentary, and haven't heard from her since. So yeah, she was humiliated. You guys gotta pay attention. I was victimized by that same process of not having a good enough job to provide a lifestyle that my first woman formerly called my first wife, wanted, and went and complained to my parents, And so my parents, my mom, came down with the family proclamation. She didn't say what I violated in it. She just waved the family proclamation as I kept trying to tell her, leave, get out. She refused to leave. She refused to get out. What a nightmare that was. So yes, the Mormons used the family proclamation to separate the family, to assign guilt and blame to the victim, who is the husband or the father, and the father. They did not understand the true doctrine because Hinckley did not write it correctly. And it was approved by all 15 prophets, by the way. Okay. So father went down to see the woman to make arrangements for the wedding feast, and Samson made there a feast, for so used the young men to do. And it came to pass, when they saw him, that they brought 30 companions to be with him. So this is the wedding feast, and they're having the bachelor party. I never got a bachelor party. I don't drink, and Mormons don't do strippers. At least not family, when family's involved. Maybe BYU roommates or whatever, but I don't know. Didn't go to BYU. I went to Rick's and then went to university in Canada. So Samson then said to them, I'm smarter than you. I will put forth a riddle unto you. If ye can certainly declare it me within the 7 days of the feast, and find it out, then I will give you 30 sheets and 30 change of garments. Notice 30. How many pieces of silver was Jesus of the Gospels betrayed by Judah for? 30 pieces of silver. That's why the symbolism was put in there that way. 30. And 7 days for the feast. So notice, from 2017, when the first total solar eclipse occurred, to the second total solar eclipse, which will occur in 2024, how many years is that? 7. What are we waiting for? The feast of the Bridegroom. It's here, guys. We're in it. And so during this time, sure enough, Delilah is supposed to betray Samson. I think are we ready to put it to an end? We're still talking about his first wife. We're not to Delilah yet. And yeah, she throws guilt trip because she tried. The 30 guys go to the wife and say, hey, he's not telling us this riddle, and you get it out of him. And so she goes to her husband and says, she cries, you hate me, you're not telling me the riddle so that I can go tell the guys so that they can win. Really makes the first wife look bad, but then again, she may be prophesied to be that horrible of a woman. After all, she's a Philistine. And so yeah, that's what it was, and so none of them could figure it out. But here's the riddle: out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. That's it. That's the riddle. That's a common riddle back in those days. There were riddles all over the place, as people thought they were being clever. What walks on all fours in the morning, 2 feet in the daytime, and 3 feet at night? The answer is man. He's a child at birth, so he crawls, and he's an upright man, 2 feet, and in the evening he has to have a cane to walk on to help him get by. That's how they did their riddles back then. Let's see. And so Samson's wife wept, and you hate me. You don't love me anymore. I'm sorry, women. You can't use emotional guilt trips to get your way. That's being wicked. Being a bad girl. She wept for 7 days while their feast lasted. It came to pass on the 7th day that he told her. Oh, okay. So this, going back over this after all these decades, I'm getting corrected. She does betray him. So there is Delilah, but I'm going to have to get to Delilah and how she betrays him to the Philistines. But yeah, this first wife, with the lion house, the beehive house, yeah, she's the one who betrays Samson with his secret name and the secret code, because it reveals that he is the promised Christ. That's what's going on here, is that he killed the lion, he killed Judah, he killed Utah, he destroyed the church. And that's the prophecy of him. And so, yeah, it says right here, he tells her that he told her because she lay sore upon him, and she told the riddle to the children of her people. Liar! Ill putrescence! Princess Bride, the old woman who condemns Princess Buttercup before her wedding as she's having her bad dream. And so the men of the city thought they were clever, and before the sun went down, see, before death, sun going down, sunset, symbol of death, what is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion? And he said unto them, if ye had not plowed with my heifer, yep, yeah, so he accuses them of having sex with his wife, his brand new wife. Ye had not found out my riddle. And so, yeah, he realizes he was betrayed. And so Delilah and his first wife are doing the same pattern of betraying Samson. Let's see, and the Spirit of the Lord came unto him, and he went down to Ashkelon and slew 30 men of them, and took their spoil, and gave change of garments unto them, which expounded the riddle. So to make good on the bet, which he lost because they cheated, having sex with his wife to get her to turn on Samson, his wife, he then went and killed 30 other people and took their garments to give as the debt that was lost in the bet. And his anger was killed him, and he went up into his father's house. I'm mad. But Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he had used as his friend. So he lost his first wife through divorce. So there's the prophecy of the first wife. Okay. Going to my wife in the chamber. He still has association with his wife, as I read in verse 15. But where does she die? So it's not in 15. Nope. No, 16 is when Delilah is here, so it's somewhere in 15 where his first wife dies. There's some bands. I'll find that and we'll end this video once I find where it is. Oh, the men of Judah. Look at that. Judah is involved in this after all. Okay. So the Utah Mormons are involved in this prophecy directly. The men. Instead of her. And Samson was blameless. Let's see. Utterly hated her. I gave her companions and her sister. Samson said concerning she was blameless and found I did not displeasure. 100 foxes, burns with fire. Philistine said, "Who has done this?" The answer is Samson, the son-in-law, and taking his wife and her companion. There it is, verse 6. And the Philistines came up and burnt her and her father with fire. So yeah, that's the fate of betraying the Christ. So this is the end of part 3. So we'll get into that and some of the symbolism, because Lehi is involved in this. Judah, as I talked about, is in this. So we'll go over those symbolisms and we might be able to cover more, get into Delilah, maybe. Delilah is going to be a big one because Delilah covers Lilith. And so there's a lot to talk about Lilith in regards to the prophecy of the last days Christ, because Elijah steps into one of the stories about Lilith in that. Alright. The other one's finished. I don't know how long it's been finished. Okay, part 2 is now saved. Okay, so we're done.